Welcome to the Deployed Podcast, where strategy, ideas, and capital come to life.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Deployed. Thank you so much for joining me. For those who don't know me, my name is Michael Kearse. I'm a real estate investor and founder of Ameripath USA. I've helped investors deploy millions into affordable real estate that creates consistent, secure returns while helping families across the country achieve home ownership. I created Deployed because I've realized that everyone has capital, whether it be money, knowledge, relationships, but few deploy it with intention. This show is all about the art and science of deployment and how high performers turn potential into power. Today, I am super excited to introduce my guest, Lisa Norwood, who has over 25 years of experience in the education space. She's actually was also a principal for 10 years, and now she started her own consulting organization where she's working with schools, helping them transfer their systems to better educate their students. How are you doing, Lisa? I'm always good. I'm always good. Thank you so much for asking. So, Lisa, I love to start out with the first question, right? It's the same one I ask everyone. Not sure if you got the second episode, but how do you usually introduce yourself for people who don't really know you or know what you do?
I usually start a little bit with my background, and you have stated that very well. Been in the education space for 25 years. Got there by accident. I'm a business major by
Okay.
college standards, and then just kind of transformed over into education. And then I usually share a little bit about my family. Married for the second time. Next week is our fourth anniversary.
Congratulations.
And I have 3 grown sons and 10 beautiful, active grandchildren.
Nice. That's big family, staying active, keeping you young. That's always good. That's always good. So you had 3 boys. You didn't want any girls, huh?
God knew I didn't need to have any girls.
I understand. I understand. So, education, when we hear about that principles, I would think that most people kind of think they know. What's one thing that most people get wrong about you and maybe how you got there in that space?
That is a good question. So for me, again, education was not on the radar. We lived in a very, I won't say it was limited in opportunities in California, a smaller community there, and there wasn't a whole lot. There was oil fields, restaurants, or education. I had already done restaurants. And my husband at the time was in oil fields. And so I just kind of happened into education and just made it work. And then, moved to Arizona and went full force into education. But I think what most people get wrong about principals themselves is that we sit in our office all day and just wait for the problems to come. And I mean, in theory, that sounds great, but that's not really what that job entails.
Got it. Gotcha. 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 Awesome. Awesome. Well, that's pretty cool. I often find that, most of the times, like when we go and get a 4-year degree, sometimes we don't get a job in that space at all. I hear that often. I think in my case, I guess it kind of worked out. I went to HBCU. I didn't know what I wanted to major in. I thought I was a good communicator, so I chose communication. Then I realized you had to write so many papers. So then I switched to psychology and I had a huge sales background. So I went right into sales. And then someone was like, you got all the sales background, you got this degree, you got to pick a lane. I was like, all right, well, I paid for this degree. Let me put it to work. And I started doing case management, but then eventually went back to school to get the MBA and still didn't know what I wanted to do either. So that's pretty cool. So, I want to go back for a second before all the wins. Who were you before this version of success showed up?
The person really trying to find my way. Like what in this new education space, right? I was young, newly married, small children, still trying to navigate like, what does this even look like? Right. And in college and right out of college, I managed restaurants. I was because my degree is in business management. So my mind was business focused, was not about serving people in the capacity that education does. And so just literally just trying to find my way. And even in that space of being a new educator, just understanding what all those nuances were and understanding what education was really about. Like we all went to school, but that doesn't mean we all can go in a classroom and teach, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We've all met our principals, but that doesn't mean we can just automatically go sit in the principal's chair. So for me, I spent a good chunk of time learning. And in still learning, even in this new space as a consultant, I'm still learning. So before now, just that person that's in that discovery phase, which is not a bad place to be in, but at some point you got to do something with all that knowledge.
Yeah, 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 absolutely, absolutely. I'm a big believer in always learning and always knowledge, always acquiring knowledge. And I think that's what helped me get to where I'm at, right? I had to learn new things. I had to think differently. And it was a way of kind of like, I don't want to say brainwashing, but really training myself to think differently. So I love education. I like that. Was there a defining failure or turning point that forced you to evolve?
Yes, I would say, let me go back to principalship, right? So being a Black female, with other Black females who were very independent, pretty much outspoken, you learn to pull that out. I wasn't always that way, but you learn, like, you get in those spaces, especially like as a principal, you learn to be that authoritative person. And so you speak your mind. And I spoke my mind. And that wasn't always a comfortable space for people, right? Because with that, I had to hold people accountable. You signed up for this. This is how we're doing it. Here are the expectations. Let me support you. And if you don't accept that, well, then we need to have a different conversation. Um, so I often ran into in that 10 years as a principal, I had superintendents who were not comfortable with a Black woman being outspoken, smart, knowing what she's doing. Like they try to push you down into that jar and tighten the lid. And I was the one kicking and screaming, like, take the lid off. I'm gonna push it off. And so I had my share of challenges as a principal. I had staff members in one particular district who said, I don't want to work for a Black female. And was very bold, very confident in their statement. And my thought was, if you don't want to work for me, how do you want to be on my campus educating students who look like me? Like,
Indeed. Yeah.
that's critical. You can't do one or the other. You do both. And so I won't say that was a failure, but it was definitely a difficult time. But again, as superintendent at the time, he was gung ho with me cleaning up the school, getting rid of people who did need to be there, that didn't appreciate our children, right? Black and brown children. But then when the table started to turn and we were making gains, we were putting in those systems, we were holding people accountable, he started to feel a little bit uncomfortable and blatantly told me, you're not the kind of leader I want in my system.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, what kind of leader are you looking for? You want somebody to come in, and you gave me 3 years, 2 years actually, to turn the school around, and we did it. So if you're not looking for somebody who gets results, then what kind of person are you looking for?
Yeah, that sounds confusing.
Right. And it was confusing. It was confusing for me, confusing for my staff. At that particular year, that was like, okay, Lisa, I've had enough of answering to people. You really don't want change. You say that you do. I'm bringing you receipts that I've done this, can do it with my eyes closed and do it well, but this is not really what you want. And so for me, that was a time to like, okay, we're not going to keep beating a dead horse. What else can you do? God has blessed me with all these gifts. I'm not just going to sit back. So how can I take what I've been doing and share that with other people?
I love that. So being faced with that unique challenge, who or what helped you see yourself as capable of more?
My therapist, because I needed therapy, right? You dealing with all of that. And then my husband, close family, my aunt, she's she's my only living relative on my mom's side. And she was like, Lisa, how do you even walk around and second guess yourself? My cousins are like, you're the smartest person we know. And I'm like, no, I'm not that smart. But they didn't understand why I was doubting myself. And even after I explained to them like some of the challenges I had in being a principal, being in this space as a Black woman, they didn't understand why my confidence might be a little shaken. And I tried to help them see that, but then my therapist helped me see what I was thinking versus what they were thinking and how I needed to rise above that and just make it work.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And you obviously had a very tight support system, which was awesome. I can see based on what you shared with me. Uh, so you've built something incredible, Lisa, but I know success is more mindset than mechanics often. So I want to unpack how you think. What principle or beliefs guide how you make decisions today?
God, like first and foremost, before I make any decision, I'm gonna pray about it. I'm going to the word, like, where is he leading me? Is this the right decision? And I started that. Well, I've always been a person of faith, but being a principal, like you and God, y'all walk in lockstep, right? Because there's so many decisions that you have to make. But even now, like I pray for the right connections because all connections are not the best connections. I pray for the right clients because all money is not good money. I pray for discernment. I pray for wisdom, understanding. And so before I do anything, like me and God are really connecting.
I like that. I like that. And do you do the same thing when you're looking at like risk versus reward?
Yes, because sometimes risk is necessary, right? And if I'm placed in a position where there is some level of risk, whether it's high or low, I know I'm not there by accident. Well, again, that's where that discernment comes in, just praying that, you know what, I'm here. Lord, you brought me here. What is it that you want me to do while I'm here? And hold my hand and guide me and help me make the right decision. My husband is really good with that, with helping me with that as well. He's total opposite of me. And he thinks more practically than I do. I'm the visionary and I'm thinking all things are possible, right? And he reels me back in like, let's talk about that. In theory it sounds good, but is that really what we need to be doing?
Yeah, yeah. And that's always good too, because I'm the same way. I'm the visionary. My wife always tells me I have rose-colored glasses. I take everyone's word for it. I'm naive. I live in the clouds, and she brings me down. So you need that. You need those people to challenge you, and that's cool. That's awesome that you have that and that you notice it, right? And you look at it as a benefit and not like a hindrance, right? Because sometimes we tend to do that. Here's another question for you along these lines of how you may think. What do you think separates people who create wealth versus those who chase it?
Think creating wealth, and you mentioned this earlier, it's a mindset, right? It's these are intentional decisions that you're making to create wealth. People who chase it, they haven't, and this is just Lisa, they haven't understood what wealth involves, right? You don't just wake up one day and say, "Oh, I want to be wealthy. Let me go do all the things that it takes to be wealthy." That's not how that works. And to me, those are people that chase it. And I've had people in my life like that. They buy into all of the get rich quick schemes will because so and so said that he made X number of dollars. So now you're going to go and do all the things he did. That may not be your lane, right? But if you're creating wealth, to me, you're building on your own gifts and talents. And you're allowing what God has blessed you with to open those doors for you and to help you understand, but also to help you think differently because wealth is about thinking differently.
Oh man, Lisa, that was so profound. You hit the nail on the coffin. When you talk about intention, intentionally doing it versus those who chase, just trying to get rich quick. I teach real estate investors and I named it virtual wealth flipping, right? And it's really about wealth building. And I tell them that wealth building is boring, right? It is boring. And I had to change. I think I said this earlier, either before we push record or maybe after. I had to, change how I thought, right? Through self-talk, through reading books on wealth building. So I really loved how you put that together. I'm gonna steal that. Thank you so much. So is there a specific way that you manage your time, energy, and relationships like assets? Do you approach it that way?
Yes. So I try to be very intentional with my time, purposeful. with my time, with my energy, with my relationships. To me, the people that you spend time with, the people that you invest in or invest in you, that all guides how you move forward. And so, for example, last year, I started my business 2023, and I was just kind of, plugging along, invested in myself, connected with some people that I thought could help me. And it wasn't bad. Those are things that I needed. Last year, 2025, the end of 2024, I realized I wasn't in the right spaces. And I needed to be around like minded people. I needed to be around people who were going to, one, support me, but also hold me accountable. But people who were also going to give me what I needed or provide that learning for me to move myself forward. And so I joined a couple of different groups, and that was exactly what I needed. My business this last year was probably the best year in business that I've had
That's awesome.
because I intentionally put myself with those people and was very thankful. I built relationships with people that I will now have for the rest of my life. But it was intentional. And again, going back to my prayer life, like I prayed for those things. Like I went back and I looked at my journal. I'm like, oh my God, I wrote this down. This is what I asked God for. And thank you because you put me in those spaces that I needed to be in. So I think when you talk about what managing our time, our energy, our relationships, like you have to be intentional with that, just as intentional as you are about brushing your teeth in the morning and washing your face, that whole routine. You need something similar to that, to me, in every area of your life, because if you're trying to grow and get to that next level, whatever it is, you have to be intentional about the people and about your time and what you do.
For a while, when I started down my entrepreneurial journey, I didn't really understand. I thought I understood what intention meant, but I really didn't understand it until I started to study on how to set goals, reading books about the law of attraction, understanding how the subconscious works, understanding how to protect your thoughts and your attention and what you're focusing on. And you're right, intention is so powerful. It really aligns with where your attention goes, energy flows, right? So I love how you share that. We talk a lot here about how people deploy their capital, not just financially, but intellectually, relationally, as you eloquently put. I'm curious how that looks for you. When you think about capital, what does that word mean to you?
When I think about capital, think again, it's not just about money. It's about people. It's about relationships, right? It's about connections, like all of that, all of those non-monetary things, right? Because capital helps you, it develops you, it grows you. And that can be financial or not, either both, right? But what are you allowing into your space, into your mind, into your circle that is going to get you to the place where you want to be?
I love that. So along those lines, how do you decide where you deploy your capital, whether it be time, money, or attention?
First, I'm gonna pray. I already said that. But I have learned to evaluate who people are, right? Like if I meet you or if we want to get together, whatever, I start looking at, so what's the purpose of this? And how is this going to help me? And can I also help that person? Because it's not always about me receiving, it's also about me giving. So is this relationship going to be a give and a take? And if I sense that it is going to be all take or all give, I kind of back myself out. Case in point, I have a close friend, love her, but I've learned her conversations with me, they're intentional on her end because she's trying to get information from me. And it took me a minute to really like figure that out. And so now, because I know that that's her mode of operation, when I do talk to her, my conversations are very short. I'm not giving up any information for free. Like I don't mind giving information for free, but when I recognize that you are connecting with me solely to pick my brain, I'm done.
just take, not reciprocal.
Exactly, exactly. And so you have to pay attention to that. But again, we're going back to mindset. Are you in the right mindset? Have you developed your mindset enough to even pay attention to that? Because the old Lisa would have just been, oh yeah, let's talk, let's have lunch, let's do all the things. When I realized like you're wasting my time. You're not respecting the value of what I bring to the table. So let me just cut this conversation short. Nice to talk to you. Nice catching up. Change the subject or hang up the phone.
Nah, I love it. No, you're right. And again, it comes back to mindset because you're now aware, intentional about how you spend that time. What kind of opportunities get your attention these days?
Right now, still in that space because I'm still a new entrepreneur, right? So I'm definitely in that space of what's the word I'm looking for? Exposure. Like what spaces, what opportunities are going to give me exposure, what opportunities are going to allow me to continue to grow as an entrepreneur, what opportunities are going to allow me to grow just as a person, because it's not just all business. I want to continue to develop personally. Well, what are those areas that I'm into and that are going to fuel me and grow me? Um,
I like it. I like it. And has your approach to wealth changed over the years?
it has. It has because I I told you before I was married previously, married for 19 years. And when I think about wealth in that sense, we lived in survival mode the whole 19 years.
Yeah.
And so coming out of that, I was single for 10 years after and still navigating, I'm a mom, but my kids are grown. I'm a single woman, successful, but what do I need to do, right? And even in that space, still learning what's important now and what's going to be important later. And that was a hard shift for me just because of how we had lived our marriage, right? Not really thinking about the future, more so thinking and living in the moment. And so now, married again for the second time, our focus is what can we do now that's going to help us be more comfortable in the next 10 or 15 years? No, we're not living in the moment anymore. We are thinking long term. And I told my husband, I don't want to retire in the United States. I want to retire on the beach somewhere
I love
and,
it.
and come back here if I want to. Right. And so, again, mindset. And how do we get to that place? What intentional steps do we need to start taking? Even for him, he's already thinking about, okay, what am I going to do when I retire? I don't just want to sit around the house. So he's got his own little ventures that he's planning on, and this is his year to research and build that foundation, and then to launch later towards the end of the year. So definitely a different way of thinking now as we get older, as you're switching careers per se, and you're more focused on, and even in our political climate, like nothing is guaranteed anymore, right? So what are you going to do? How are you going to survive in the uncertainty?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So do you see, are there any opportunities to deploy capital, whether it be intellectually, financially? Do you see any big opportunities over the next few years?
Yes. I think what drew me to your podcast and what you do, we meaning my husband and I have been looking into real estate and what does that look like for us and other ways to invest what we have and in terms of financial capital, right? In terms of intellectual opportunities, how am I going to continue to grow, as an entrepreneur? Where are those spaces where I'm learning from people who are doing it? And not that I want to be a copycat, but what strategies did you use that I can now use in my space? For me, it's no longer where I'm focused. I am still focused on education because that's where my gifts are, right? But I can still learn from someone who's never been in the education space because they have strategies that I can take and move over into my education space. So my learning now is very intentional about, and I'm looking more for strategies. How do I scale? And again, still being a very new entrepreneur, I'm still in that stage where I can go up or down. The goal is to go up. So what do I need to learn from people that are already there, have been there? How did they get there? And so what do I need to learn, and what spaces do I need to be in to get me to where I want to be?
I love that. I love that. Jay Abrams, you just consider like one of the top consultants. Really, he had the luxury of working in so many different types of industries. And I think more along the lines of growing and expanding and scaling. And one of the things that he talked about was he would take specific strategies from various industries and apply them to different industries and would be able to exponentially grow businesses. So when you talk about, talking to someone that may not be in the education space, but maybe doing something that you could take and put into your industry is very, very powerful. So if you haven't heard of him, or I would suggest looking him up. It's intriguing, especially with where you are trying to grow. I always like to end with perspective because again, the way we deploy capital says a lot about who we are and what we value. What does legacy mean to you?
Legacy has taken on a whole new meaning for me. Again, just being in the space that I'm in now, it's about learning, it's about mindset and understanding what legacy really means, right? It's not just about, it is about money, it is about finances, but that's not the only thing it's about. It's also about how you think, what we talked about in the very beginning, how you manage your time, how you manage your energy, how you manage your relationships. How can I take that and share that? Like now with my sons. My sons are all grown, they have their families, and we have those types of conversations. We talk about what they learned or didn't learn from me and their dad. Like, where did we fail them in terms of leaving a legacy?
That's a great question.
And how do I write that now? Like, it was wrong. We raised you all in a sense, like your values, all of that was great. But in terms of taking care of yourself and your family, we did not do a good job in preparing you all for where you are now. So what can I do now? And even with my middle son, because he's the thinker like me, he and I talk about this regularly. How can we learn this together so that I'm still young enough, I can still leave a legacy with you, but how are you going to start building that legacy for your children? And we're going to learn this side by side. So things that I read now and things that I come across, I send it to him. Things that he reads or comes across, he sends it to me. So we're on this journey together, and he's in his early 30s, but I see that as an opportunity to build a legacy of learning and intentionality with him, because it's not too late unless you're just sitting back and not doing anything, right? Legacy doesn't mean you have to start when they're 25 and give them a college fund. That's great if you had that opportunity. But what can you do right now in this moment to start building that legacy with your family so that they can build theirs?
Man, I love it. That's awesome. We're coming to an end, and I want to do the bonus section with you, Lisa. This is one of my fun sections. So what I'm gonna do, rapid fire round. I'm gonna ask you 4 or 5 questions, and I just want you to tell me it's the first thing that comes to your mind. Cool. All right. Awesome. Book that changed your life. I knew you were gonna say that. Best investment under $500.
Therapist.
Ooh, one word that defines success. We can come back to that one.
Okay, yes.
Okay. Who do you admire for how they deploy capital?
I have learned her name's Erica Jordan Thomas. She's a educator building her education consulting business, and she's teaching other educators how to do the same. She's powerful.
Yes, nice. That's awesome. Okay, and then success. One word. Got one?
Joy.
Perfect. Perfect answer. Perfect answer. Everyone, that is it for our episode today. Thank you again for spending time with me and Lisa. Lisa, it was a pleasure. Thank you for investing your time with me. And we will see you all on the next episode.
You've been watching the Deployed podcast, where we deploy insight, capital, and growth.